Juliet Rylance, your character on the Knick is pro-choice, she's a woman in an executive position, and she's in an interracial relationship. So is it harder or is it easier to play such a modern character in a period piece?
I don't know. I feel like a lot of the issues that Cornelia faces, bizarrely, I still think are relevant today. So, I mean, obviously it's a lot harder, in the sense that, she's very confined by the social mores of, the period and definitely the glass ceiling for women working is, intense in this period in 1901. But I think you still have echoes of that, even now, and definitely there are still, race issues. So I think that there's so much about her journey and playing her that I feel that all the time. So I'd say there are more sort of similarities than differences, really. But I think, obviously she's in a situation where she doesn't want to be, a charity wife in New York fundraising for bulls, which is very worthy in itself, but she wants to be on the front line doing something that she can see the result. And I think that for her is very difficult because no one, even her father, who's pretty progressive in a lot of ways, doesn't really believe that she can do that forever. And I think it's just sort of going along with her having this little experience working at the hospital, having no idea that she wants to stay.
So in doing research for your role, did you base Cornelia off of any real-life figures or characters from other works?
There are several women of the period that I feel like Jack Amiel and Michael Begler did sort of draw on for Cornelia. One of them is Elizabeth Brackwell, who actually was the first woman to receive a medical degree in America. And she wrote this incredible book called something like Pioneering Work in the Medical Profession, in opening the medical profession to women. And she really sort of went out there and just fought for, becoming a nurse and then sort of writing this book and trying to really open up the medical field so that women could work as nurses and more than that, become, have become doctors. So she was quite an incredible woman, and I think fought very, very hard. And I think there's a lot of, reading about her life, there's a lot of Cornelia traits in her story.
So what surprised you most about Cornelia in the first season?
She has to be very buttoned up. There are the sort of social etiquette of what's expected from her. And obviously she has to behave in a certain way, but there's this flip side to her, which I love, which is, she's definitely a heart before head and just dives into things almost without thinking. She loves first and thinks later. And I love that juxtaposition between being very buttoned up in one sense and very unbuttoned sort of in privacy. So that's really fun.
In the first season, John Thackery, he's at the hospital, operating on patients, but then you were kind of off on the side sometimes chasing Mary. So what do you think the typhoid storyline was really about?
It really happened, in that year, that this huge typhoid epidemic was stopped. And then because no one took it seriously, it then actually became an epidemic the next year when they released Mary Mallon from being confined on an island. So I love the fact that our brilliant writers put that storyline in because it was really happening, and it was just great to be able to play that storyline. And it's so up Cornelia's street, just sort of finding some kind of big secret sort of investigative work on the side and just chasing it down. So that was really fun.
I saw the movie Sinister recently, which you were in, and I noticed that in that movie you used, your natural accent, whereas the rest of your family was American. So I'm wondering, how do you decide what accent to use for a role? And with the Knick, did you try to maybe not go with just a normal American accent since it is in a different time?
I sort of really take each role, case by case, and when I read the role, when I read the script, I hear it in my head in an accent. Often, if I'm doing an audition, you'll suddenly go, oh, this is a Southern, you sort of hear the Southern accent in your head, in your own voice. So I feel with Sinister, Ethan and I had worked together before and love working together, and we both felt that we wanted the relationship to feel kind of sort of on our centers as much as possible, and so it felt like me having my natural accent and him having his natural accent would make sense. For this, I just heard Cornelia's voice, and it wasn't my English accent. It was an early New York accent. And then we worked a lot. Stephen and I talked about it, and there was a big discussion early on about how period to go. Because the period accent is much stronger than anything we're doing. It sounds, if you listen to sort of Vanderbilt and some of these amazing women, they sound really British. They sound sort of Katharine Hepburn times kind of 5, veering to the English. So we just kind of, Stephen, I think very early on realized that he didn't want it to be so period in sound that it would distance the audience from us too much. So we just kind of created something that was American, but sort of early with a little bit of English sort of in there. And then I worked with Tim Monick, and Clive also worked with Tim Monick, this brilliant, brilliant dialect coach. And we sort of found the sound for her.
Okay, so you've only got a few credits on IMDb, but you've already worked with Ethan Hawke and Clive Owen. How are you getting these roles?
I don't know. I'm pretty selective, I think, about. I kind of only do work that if I read the script and I don't immediately kind of go, I have to do this, then I don't do it. And I think that what that means is I don't sort of, I don't have kind of hundreds of credits, but I feel like everything that I do means something, and means something to me. So I kind of like that way of working. I work a lot in the theater as well, and do the same thing. That if I read it and I just have a kind of my heart leaps, then I'll do it.
You've primarily been a stage actress. So how are you finding television and movies versus that?
It's a really strange thing, and I think it's something that actors talk about all the time. It's actually really similar. And go, they're completely different mediums, and you have to work completely differently, and so it's kind of an ongoing exploration that we in the theatre community and film community, I think, talk as actors about all the time. And I find it fascinating how the differences and similarities, and you never expect that they'll line up. The things that line up do. I love working with Stephen. Has been such a fantastic way into television for me, because he works in such a fluid, collaborative way that there's no big lighting rigs, and it really looks like a real room, as if you were walking onto stage and just being on the stage without anything to distract you. And there's so much freedom about just playing and rehearsing, and then he just shoots, and we normally only do 1 or 2 takes, so it does feel a lot more like theatre than I've experienced in other film projects.
I asked your co-star Andre Holland last week about the Satellite Awards and how you guys won Best Cast, but he said that he was busy shooting. So were you able to go to the ceremony and accept?
No, we were all working, I think. I'm pretty sure.
No.
We are going to go to the Peabody Awards, though. We just won a Peabody Award, so I think Andre and I are going to go and do that. But yeah, we're heavily into the 2nd season, which is we sort of, I think, we've got about a month left, and it's amazing how much more sort of comfortable, and we're moving much more quickly, and Stephen is just coming up with the most extraordinary work, and I think this next season is going to feel even bigger and bolder and more epic than the last one.
Okay, well, on behalf of Gold Derby, thanks very much, Juliet, and we look forward to seeing the 2nd season of The Knick.
Thank you so much.